At this time, I'd like to have our Vice President of Programs, Rita Bonacera, introduce the speaker for this evening. Rita?
Hi, everybody. Hi. We've all heard the expression movers and shakers, right? According to Merriam-Webster.com, a mover and shaker is a person who is active or influential in some field of endeavor. This phrase more than adequately describes tonight's speaker, Debbie Bacigalupi. Debbie is a sixth-generation Californian, and her family includes fifth-generation cattle ranchers and farmers in Siskiyou County. This Northern California rural county has been under environmental attack, and Debbie wasn't going to sit still and watch its demise. Thus, she became a mover and a shaker in defending our private property rights. She was a 2012 U.S. House of Representatives Republican candidate for California's 14th district. Although she lost, she has continued her crusade and tirelessly fights to protect our rights and our freedoms. She has spoken throughout the U.S. on topics covering Agenda 21, Earth Summit, One Bay Area, water rights, overregulation, government corruption, get the drift? In fact, she even attended the 2012 Rio Earth Summit, United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. Debbie graduated summa cum laude from Notre Dame de Namur with a Bachelor of Science and master's degrees in business management. She is a certified sommelier, a certified event planner, and as Debbie says, a proud American. If you want a prime example of citizen activism and a patriotic mover and shaker, you don't have to look very far. Please give a warm welcome to our speaker, Debbie Bacigalupi.
It's really great to be here. I have to express that this has been one of the talks that I'm most learn in one of these speeches and do something with it. So for tonight, I hope that you find something in what I have to present to you. Find something that you're passionate about and help us fight for the freest, most amazing place I think any of us will ever know, have ever known, and could ever know in the world. Tonight's talk is called High-Speed Agenda to One. And I hope we don't have to get used to hearing that sound around here. Now, when it comes to PowerPoint presentations, I break all the rules. My slide presentation, I believe it's 76 slides. I think I must have like 6 videos. So tonight, I hope that everything works out well. Now with that, we have, talking about high tech, we live in Silicon Valley. We live in I believe, the capital of the world about high tech communication. We have our traditional mail, our snail mail, our old landline phones. We also have the internet, we have blogging, we have Facebook. In other words, we have all these amazing ways of communicating. And with all those ways of communicating, so do our representatives. They have all the access to communicate with us as well. And therefore, we, I believe, should be the most informed voters the world has ever known. And if this is the case, then are our representatives doing their job? And are you aware of these facts? Have they told you about these facts? The federal government now controls the student loan program and it's now implementing what is called the Common Core Standards. In the Common Core Standards, they're teaching students, kids, all about global warming. And SAT questions are being devised around global warming. And even if your kid goes to a private school or charter school, they are going to have to succumb to this global warming carbon credit world that we're moving into. Our federal government now controls over 90% of the mortgage industry, so what must your kids, what must you now do in order to simply buy a home? The Affordable Health Care Act, we told it was affordable, right? We're finding out that that's not the truth. Government panels will decide the future of our treatments. The most important areas of our lives, our children, education, our homes, our health, are now controlled by the federal government. And if that wasn't enough, we have this.
House Concurrent Resolution 353, concurrent resolution expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit by developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy, by cooperating with all countries to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment, and by supporting and participating in a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H. Res. 353, expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, the sponsor, to explain the resolution.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. In fact, it is a very simple resolution, which the gentleman has just mostly explained. The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. H. Res. 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21. The resolution also urges the United States to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment and to support the creation of a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission headed by an Undersecretary General. The 71 co-sponsors of this measure include one-half the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee and all of the House delegates to the Earth Summit. It is also supported by the major United States non-governmental organizations concerned with the environmental issues. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution.
Mr. Speaker, I do support this resolution, which expresses the sense of Congress with respect to implementing the decisions of the recent United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. And I do want to express and commend the gentlelady from California, Mrs. Pelosi, for her sponsorship of this important resolution. The fact is that the United States government made a very constructive contribution in Rio and in the talks that led to the meeting in Rio. Largely as a result of the conference, they adopted 4 major items: the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, the lengthy action plan referred to as Agenda 21, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the non-binding but authoritative principles for the management and conservation of forest resources. In addition, the conference adopted the UN Biodiversity Convention. The administration has already made a good beginning in implementing the results of the conference. And during the talks on climate, the administration pledged $75 million for related projects in developing countries, including the development of national plans.
How many have seen that before? The whole video you could see on C-SPAN. It's there. And we are told that we're conspiracy theorists, right? And this is neither a left or a right issue.
Mr. Speaker, I do support this resolution.
Both Republicans and Democrats support this resolution. So as we're told that we are conspiracy theorists and we go around wearing tinfoil hats, I decided I needed to go to the Rio Earth Summit myself, especially as running as a congressional candidate, to find out just exactly what was happening under the United Nations Sustainable Development Plans that we see and experience and hear about all the time here in the United States. So that's me. I'm at the United Nations Rio Earth Summit in Brazil at the United Nations bookstore. And the name of this conference was The Future We Want. And as a corporate event planner, I can tell you, for a conference that was supposed to be about the environment and saving the environment and global warming, as a corporate event planner, I can tell you, I saw tremendous amount of waste, subflooring, lighting, plants being brought in, and documents, thousands of them, being printed up minute by minute as they changed the Rio Earth Summit and the major documents that were at this conference in order to create the future we all want. Now, I wasn't the only American there.
Brazil has done the world a great service by hosting us all here. This can be a fractious time, but thanks to Brazil's deft and effective leadership, we have coalesced around an outcome document that marks a real advance for sustainable development. We know this is one of the most pressing matters of our time, because how we grow together over the long term isn't a question for only some countries. It is a question for all countries. But let's be honest. We know what is possible. We know what we could do. But we also know that the future is not guaranteed. Because the resources that we all depend upon, fresh water, thriving oceans, arable land, a stable climate, are under increasing pressure. And that is why in the 21st century, the only viable development is sustainable development. The only way to deliver lasting progress for everyone is by preserving our resources and protecting our common environment.
She said some pretty important things. Our common environment, saving our resources. Now, what I want you to know about Agenda 21 and what we are experiencing today on new zoning and regulations and all these private property things that are happening, the One Bay Area Plan, is this has been in the works for a long time. And you can see that here's a little timeline. 1992, George Herbert Walker Bush soft lawed treaty into the United States Agenda 21, followed shortly after in 1993 by President Clinton. He introduced the President's Council through executive order, the President's Council on Sustainable Development. Then we had our mayors get involved, and then we had our governors get involved as well. Now there's three main documents when you're talking about United Nations Agenda 21 and what we're seeing today. Most people are familiar with this orange book. And in this orange book, on chapter 28, a group called ICLEI, the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives, International Council, is here locally implementing, encouraging, pushing, urging our city councils into sustainable development practices. The other book is this one, and I call this my Crook book. It's called the Global Biodiversity Assessment, nearly 1,200 pages. And let me tell you about this book. This book, on page 337, ski runs, unsustainable. Page 350, grazing, livestock, cows, sheep, goats, horses, unsustainable. Fencing, pastures, paddocks, unsustainable. The way my parents farm and ranch, unsustainable according to these people. Herbicides, building materials, tile, roads, fish ponds, plantations, modern hunting, dams, roads, dams. It just goes on and on. Now, something about this book also is they talk about Agenda 21, and they say Agenda 21 calls for inventorying and monitoring international conventions, biodiversity, global climate change, deforestation, all the things you just heard in that video. Given the increasing demands for information and reductions in research budgets, we must start to integrate and coordinate our inventorying and monitoring programs of everything you and I do. Now you may say that, you know what, how do you know that they're using this book? I know, because I had the 2011 Global Biodiversity Assessment Summary for Policymakers that is being used. So another third document is the United Nations Earth Charter. Now what is important about the United Nations Earth Charter is it is supposed to, for the 10 Commandments, this document will replace the 10 Commandments. Now in the United States, we believe in private property. The 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal someone's private property. The United Nations wants to replace the 10 Commandments, replace the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence with the Earth Charter. So those are the three main documents that make up the United Nations Agenda 21. Now I went to the Notre Dame Day Moore, and they asked me to speak to students about what it was like to run for Congress. Well, after I walked out thinking I did a pretty good job, I went to a cork board right outside the classroom at Notre Dame Day Moore in Belmont, and I happened to see this flyer. And what stood out to me on the flyer was Tucker has been involved with the Earth Charter since its inception and will be inviting the NDNU community to endorse the United Nations Earth Charter. This is devastating. So let me tell you a little bit more about Agenda 21. In this book, remember I mentioned the President's Council on Sustainable Development? Well, this is a book called Agenda 21, The Earth Summit Strategy to Save Our Planet, edited by Daniel C. Tars. Now, Daniel C. Tars was one of President Clinton's appointees in the President's Council on Sustainable Development. So to further understand what Agenda 21 is, on page 6, it reads this: effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced, a major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action. You and I breathe, that is a human action. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. Now that's not enough. Our children are being taught the same. Actually, the foreword of this book, the introduction, was by U.S. Senator Paul Simon. Let me tell you what U.S. Senator Paul Simon had to say in the United Nations Agenda 21 workbook for children. The planet groans every time it registers another birth. Could you imagine being a child and reading that book? And there's lots of Agenda 21 books for children. There's tons. Pachamama, Mission Earth Planet. We also have college books about the Rio Earth Summit and Agenda 21. And this one with wolves, which we'll talk about in a little bit, says land given the greatest protection is designated wilderness. We'll talk about that in a bit too. Some 46 million additional acres are being protected as possible additions to the wilderness system of the future. Now, why is that important? Because under the Global Biodiversity Assessment Report, wherever I put that, it talks about biodiversity and what is the species. At the time that they wrote this book, there were 2 million species in the world that were studied. They had 18 million more species, according to them, to go. And at the time that this book was written, again, only 2 million species were studied. Some other interesting things about the Global Biodiversity Assessment Report is that it says that private property, we cannot have private property. It also says that we, human beings, live in human wastelands. And there's chapters on monitoring, surveilling. I invite you to get this book and start reading it, because when you start reading this book and looking at what they have going on, you will see so many things around you today that match what's in this book. Again, in the United States, we believe in private property. What is private property? Private property is the thoughts in your head. The thoughts in your head and what you do with your hands, what you create. That's your private property until you give it away. But the United Nations, they do not believe this. The United Nations under sustainable development has 3 E's of sustainable development: social equity, economic justice, and environmental justice. And because of this, private property is therefore unacceptable into this new agenda for the 21st century, because private property cannot be controlled by individuals according to them. Private land ownership is a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to one of the 3 E's of sustainable development, which is social inequity or social injustice. Social justice can only be achieved if land is used in the interest of the entire society, the good of the community. This, for you and me, then therefore means massive change. Government and special interest groups, their goal is to change our behavior. And how do we know this? Because one of Obama's, and remember I told you in the beginning, this is not a left-right issue. This is not a Republican or a Democrat issue, it's an American freedom issue. Government and NGOs want to nudge us into making decisions that they think we should be making. One of Obama's very first appointments as a czar was a professor, Richard Cass Sunstein. He believes that people have a bit of Homer Simpson in us, that we have a bit of stupidity, a bit of duh. And what can you do with someone's duh? You can take advantage of it, and you can nudge them into making the decisions you want them to make. And we are seeing that all in the One Bay Area plan. But here's some more evidence of how our government and these special interest groups are trying to change our behavior. This slide comes straight from a presentation given by the Lawrence Back Berkeley National Lab in 2011 in Sacramento to California Air Resource Board, the group that's behind the cap and trade, and the California Public Utilities Commission. And you can see from their own slide, we need to change people from consumer ownership to a rental service model. Here's some more. Another slide they had. We need to right-size homes. We need to right-size appliance capacities. We need to have people using manual egg beaters, air drying clothes, playing a guitar instead of watching TV tonight. And of course, you're going to bike versus drive, especially if they pass the One Bay Area plan. Lifestyle decisions regarding where you live, how you live, whether your home is private, whether it's detached or shared, car ownership, that will change. So I would like to drive this, but they want to push me and nudge me into something like that before they see me on that. Not using that, but using that. Because this is all about our carbon footprint. And according to the Global Biodiversity Assessment Report and the United Nations and California Air Resource Board, we as humans are over-consuming. We, as North American human beings, are so over-consuming that according to this document, the world's population should be between 500 million and a billion people if people throughout the world are living like you and me in North America. You must curb your consumerism. Now this is from a website called TerraPath, and I believe that this is the future of the cap and trade system. Right now they say it's voluntary, but we know how that goes. So I calculated my 1994 318 BMW that I've had since 1994. And I also calculated, I might go on a trip to France because that's one of the next Rio Earth conventions, or not Rio, but one of the next United Nations conferences is in France. And then my home energy in San Carlos. And this is how much it's going to cost me, $190 to offset my carbon footprint. They're starting kids early on this. This is from cooltheworld.com. And the kids can take this test on, well, how much carbon dioxide are they using every year? So I took the test, and what I found out was that if I were a child, I would be consuming about 12,000 tons of carbon dioxide, which is very bad. And at the bottom of this, right here, even though you can't see it, I've enlarged it. Did you know, they're telling these children, the average grown-up has a carbon footprint of 14 tons a year. By 2050, we need to cut that down to 2 tons a year. Is this the future we want? Is this the future we want? No. All right, here's some more evidence. This is from our own California.gov websites. This is the Biodiversity Council. What's this book? The Global Biodiversity Assessment Report. Who do they quote? Reed Noss. Reed Noss believes in the Wildlands Project, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Reed Noss is a biologist from Florida. He also came up with the concept of pores, corridors, and carnivores. Here's another quote from the Biodiversity Council, World Resources Institute, and what they're describing here is what is biodiversity. So they use Reed Noss, and then they use the United Nations Environment Program, the Global Biodiversity Strategy, which is this book, is who our own California government is quoting. And let me just read this from just box 7. As part of the larger effort to achieve sustainable development, conserving biodiversity requires fundamental changes and practices of economic development worldwide. The focus of activity must be where people live and work, as well as protected wildland areas. Here's another. This is what people are seeing on our own California.gov website. This is your traditional farm. I'm a farmer's daughter, and, well, you can see all this activity, this carbon dioxide and methane, and the only thing that isn't impacting the environment is their wind turbine. Now they want to move us into beefless Mondays or beefless Fridays or meatless, whatever the USDA is coming up with. And why? Well, we'll get into why in just a little bit, but here's what you should know as you're going around and people are saying, yeah, we should eat less meat. In order to get the same nutritional value from 3 ounces of beef, you're going to have to eat 12 cans of tuna or 7 chickens. Now, if you look at this slide, you might go, yeah, those are products that we use every day. Did you know that every single one of those pictures is a byproduct of livestock, whether it's beef or cattle or pig? Over 99% of our cattle, of pigs, of whatever livestock are used in production, whether it's for medical reasons or food or sustainability or clothing or asphalt or glue or paint. So for all the environmentalists who go around flying around the world saying that we farmers and ranchers are responsible for the world, over 50% of the world's global warming, they could not survive without livestock. I'm going to take you to my ranch, my favorite place in the whole wide world. And according to these people in the Global Biodiversity Assessment, places like this, unsustainable. Private, open space, unsustainable. My mom's yard, unsustainable. It's ironic, huh? My dad's pond, unsustainable. Cows, unsustainable. But that wind turbine, that's sustainable. A city built on landfill, San Francisco, that's sustainable. Berkeley, sustainable. Stack and pack housing, sustainable. A bridge that we outsourced to China, unsustainable. Environmental groups, all housed in San Francisco. They had big parties at big ticket prices. That's sustainable. But my dad's pond that he built, our cows, our horses, that, according to these people, people is unsustainable. Now here's something you should know about our food system. California was once the breadbasket of the world. We could actually feed easily the whole United States. But today, our cattle ranchers and our farmers and our ag producers are experiencing a very different future and a very different present. Hay and dust can be considered pollutants now. The Endangered Species Act, where my parents live, in Siskiyou County, which is Northern California, we're actually in Central California right now, but in Northern California, $25,000 if a fish that is under the Endangered Species Act is found dead on our property. This could be a fingerling, which is about the size of your finger. Fencing setbacks. They want us to spend money on getting livestock, including elk and whatever other wild animals are out there, off the rivers. But we're going to have to pay for this, and what it does is takes away prime ag land. They want us to move from flood irrigation to sprinkler. And if you think about flood irrigation, it's great. Not only do the roots get stronger because they need to go down into the ground to find the water, but these flood irrigation also recharges the aquifers. We had a Water Master program that was just canceled not too long ago. Jerry Brown did this. And what was the Water Master program? Well, there's always been water wars. And without a referee, a water master, you continue to have water wars. But Jerry Brown didn't want to do that, so what he did was canceled. And this is my parents' bill from one day to the next. This is a $450 bill that went up to $3,600 per year. You think that's going to impact your food, your price, your food prices? The other thing, what they're doing is electricity surcharges. So for dam removal, which we'll talk about in just a bit, right now Siskiyou County residents are being charged over 300% for their electricity bills for a potential dam removal in Siskiyou County. A lot of you know about the CAL FIRE tax, cap and trade. No one knows the extent of cap and trade. No one knows the extent of Obamacare. And what is the point of this whole slide? This is unsustainable to we Californians. And this is an attack on you and me and our lifestyles. Talked about dams earlier, now let's just talk a little bit more about the dams. So down with the dams and dam to the people. You can see here that this is American Rivers. American Rivers is an environmental group, and their goal, as you can see, is to remove 26,000 dams across the United States. This is billions of acre feet of stored water that we need every year. You can see this is one of their recent posts is U.S. dam removal season off to a good start. You can see June 12, 2013, that was recent. And the Elwha in Washington, already removed. This has been the largest dam removal in history. And Bruce Babbitt, who was the former Secretary of the Department of Interior, just this last fall, says, with public opinion now moving our way nationally and in the Northwest, we ratcheted up our efforts in Congress to finish off the Elwha dams. Slowly, at what seemed a glacial pace, funding started to flow, finally coming to fruition. Others will have their own compelling stories. Remember those 26,000 dams? He's looking at 75,000 dams across the United States. So here's what the Elwha looked like. Clean, green, hydroelectric energy. All it needed was a fish ladder, but that wasn't good enough for them. So they had to destroy the whole thing. And people and residents in and around Elwha in the Olympic National Park are devastated. They know what was used was false science to get these dams removed. Now here in Northern California, we have the potential for the largest dam removal in the world in history. These are the Klamath River dams. How many have heard of the Klamath River dams? Great. This is where my parents' ranch is. And when they decide, right now, it's going to Congress, it's contentious, there's false science that's being used, there's Department of Interior scientists who have been fired. When they remove these dams, which is what the agenda is right now, it will be what they call full basin management. What is full basin management? All water, regardless of on the Klamath River or not, must be controlled. So that means if you have water rights and your ranch is 20 miles away but in the Klamath River Basin, so long, sayonara to your water rights. Now this looks like a confusing picture here, but what this represents is the ocean over here and the first dam. There's a series of 4 on the Klamath River. Now why are these dams being considered for removal? Because someone says that the coho salmon is endangered and can't swim 187 miles upstream and past like it used to. Well, let me tell you something. Those fish prefer to be near the ocean. They are cold stream, prefer ocean, clean water fish. And when you go all the way up to these dams, you will find that the lakes are low-level lakes, naturally phosphorus rich from volcanic activity, green, blue-green algae. Those fish can't survive anyway. So what this picture represents is 12,500 miles of sediment washed 187 miles out to sea. So in other words, the very same fish they claim to save is the very same fish, along with wildlife and people and communities, that will be destroyed as they destroy these dams. I have a question then. We have global warming, we have 1.4 meter rise in our seas because the glaciers are melting. People are dying from hunger around the world. We have droughts, we have fires, we have floods. In fact, this year is predicted to be a huge fire year. Our general plans are being altered. And this is a threat to communities. Don't we need more stored water? And if we need more stored water, why is our government and special interest groups on an agenda to remove over 75,000 dams? Now here's where the future of your food is.
My name is Dixon DePalmier. I teach at Columbia University's Medical School and School of Public Health. The world would be a much better place if we had vertical farming. New York City, where I live, that's a big city, right? 8 million people. These 8 million people consume food that it takes the state of Virginia in landmass to grow. We have to find another way to farm. And here's the other way to farm. If you could think of stacking greenhouses on top of each other, that would be one way to envision it. You know, the leaning, not the leaning tower pizza, forget about that. Think about the hanging gardens of Babylon. Here's my vision of what a vertical farm might look like. My gold standard for this is the Apple Store in New York City on Fifth Avenue. If you took that building and made it into a 5-story building, now in the building you have multiple floors, of course. And inside each floor you have multiple layers of crops. Let's take some typical crops. Let's take tomatoes, strawberries, and turnips. And you could grow a lawn of cabbage, a lawn of lettuce. There's a seed sorting facility next door. You've got people sitting there sorting out all the seeds of the world coming in. This one's good, this one's not so good. You've got continuous planting at one end, monitoring of growth in the middle. At the end of it, you've got people harvesting. I mean, what you've done here is create a mini ecosystem. My world will be ecologically balanced. And it will be balanced because we've learned how to manufacture food for ourselves in tall buildings within the cityscape. We have learned to live within our means. Life is good. Life is good. Life is good.
And that is no joke. Even in my city of San Carlos, they are now talking about food shelters. So if you haven't felt like we've been attacked enough, how many have heard about the Canadian gray wolves that our Department of Fish and Game, or Wildlife now they call them, would like to introduce into California? These are disease-carrying, killing machines. And in Siskiyou County, which is where my parents' ranch is, they say that Siskiyou County can handle over 470 Canadian gray wolves. And this is what these wolves do. They devastate livestock. Here is Department of U.S. Fish and Wildlife and California Department of Fish and Wildlife now game. And this was taken directly from California Fish and Wildlife website. And you can see they tracked OR7, which was a Canadian gray wolf that came into Northern California into Siskiyou County. The wolf is collared, it's GPSed. If you kill it, you go to jail and you get fined something like $100,000. Here's a memorandum from Chuck Bonham, who was appointed as director of California Department of Fish and Wildlife by Jerry Brown. And you can see that he talks about the biological diversity, the Center for Biological Diversity, on that, you know what, we've done the study on these wolves, let's go for it. And then we have students being urged. Now remember I showed you about Mary Evelyn Tucker earlier from NDNU, and she was trying to urge the students to endorse the United Nations Earth Charter. Well, this was also at that same talk of Mary Evelyn Tucker. And you can see that, dear colleague, we want to urge the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to keep wolves protected. And then they made it convenient for you that all you had to do was sign and send it off to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service saying, you're all for wolves. How many have heard about Yosemite and what's happening at Yosemite? Devastating. For river restoration, here is something, here's the summary guide for the Merced River restoration. Do you know what it's a summary guide for? Not just this document, plus this one, and plus this one. This, as the public, this is what you had to read, the environmental impact reports and studies, in order to comment on Merced River restoration. And what's happening regardless of what alternative, which there are 6, to restore the Merced River, there are 6, with that, no matter what alternative is chosen by the National Park Service, all of these things go. Curry Village, Yosemite Lodge, temporary employee housing, the Ahwahnee swimming pool, the tennis courts, the ice skating rink, horse rental, raft rental, bike rental, gone. Why? What does that have to do with river restoration? How many have heard about the California Foothills Legacy Area? Over 18 million acres from Redding to Fresno being studied based on biodiversity and species for limited to no human use. This is prime ag land, and it is being studied for little to no human use. How about the Sierra Nevada's Foothills Wildlife Connectivity Project? A lot of you have just recently heard about the toads and the frogs. They don't want us in these areas, and they're studying again another project for limited to no human use. Here is the California Essential Habitat Connectivity Project. All the green and yellow is for limited to no human use. And then you have the linkage priorities in California based on rewilding California. And you can see where all the linkages that they're studying to give animals priority over human beings. Here's the proposed NorCal Wildlands project. And you can see all the proposed wilderness, potential wilderness, new wilderness. And if you put that map on top of the other maps, you got this map. And what is this map? How many are familiar with this map? This is the Wildlands Project. Remember Reed Noss earlier? The one who helped create the Wildlands Project, the one who says course corridors and carnivores? Well, now maybe it'll make sense why the carnivores. Because in the red zones is no human use. The yellow is limited to no human use. The yellow zones is for government and special interest groups to do studies. And where do you and I get to live? We get to live in the One Bay area, which is right here. We get to live in that region, and you can see in California there are 2 regions, Northern California and Southern California. And then you have the course corridors and carnivores. How do you keep us out of those areas? I'm not going out in the wilderness when I know there are Canadian gray wolves that sit about this high and will destroy everything and anything in their path. How many have heard about the Drakes Bay Oyster Farm? Did you know that over 308,000 photos were taken of the Lenny family, and not one photo showed that they were guilty of messing with the wildlife? And yet, Ken Salazar, who was our Department of Interior, the secretary who wants the Klamath River dams removed, he never used one picture to prove the family's innocence in what they were doing. And yet, they want Drakes Bay Oyster Farm shut down anyway. And not only that, the EIR, the Environmental Impact Report and Study, also used a 1950 Japan study on a completely different species. And there we have Ken Salazar, who wants dams removed, who wants people, I believe, off land. And then you have your One Bay Area Plan. Now, how many have heard about the One Bay Area Plan? Every hand should be raised, because Mimi just talked about it earlier. But this plan has been going through secretly for many years. In fact, we know it's been in the works for over 20 years now. We have the original blueprint on what they were coming up with for this plan. Now, this plan will reorient us completely. It'll reorient our private property. It will have priority development areas and priority conservation areas. And if you own private property in any of those areas, you will have to follow rules. And if you're outside of those areas, too bad, your property can't do anything with it.
Today, California is in fact...
Let me go back real quickly. What is happening to us in the Bay Area under the One Bay Area Plan is we are being regionalized. And what is regionalized? What is regionalism? In the Wildlands Project, you saw the two regions in California. That is regionalism, where we become one. So here's a video. I may not play it due to time, the whole thing, but this is from Joint Venture Silicon Valley. They just had a conference on February 8th. And the futurist who is speaking is a fellow named Paul Sappho, and here's what he has to say about the Bay Area.
Today, California is in fact breaking away from the rest of the United States because of a very profound global shift. Power in this century is devolving away from nation states. The real nexus of power in this century is moving from nation states to city-states. Bay Area is a good example. City-states, both de facto, de jure, legally recognized city-states with seats at the United Nations like Singapore, and also de facto city-states, powerful regions, are the new basic unit of governance in the 21st century. A city-state is defined by cohesive, pragmatic governance. We have a good start with some regional entities, BART, ABAC, but this is where we need to work more. Note that nations don't disappear, and they're not going to disappear in this century replaced by city-states. But now regions and city-states in particular will hold the power. We're a city-state, we should act like it. We need to go a step further and say it's time to start thinking about boundary drops between counties. Look at this map. Why don't we include Santa Cruz as part of the Bay Area? What about San Joaquin Valley? It's important to note that, of course, the Bay Area is not the only city-state in California. Los Angeles, of course, the LA Basin is another. But it's not just Los Angeles. And it's an interesting case because the San Diego city-state is not just on the U.S. side of the border. It includes Mexicali, it includes Tijuana, but also it's an important indicator of what's happening, the shift of power from capitals, from centers to boundaries, from capitals to borders, and the dissolving nature of the nation state. We shouldn't call this the San Diego region. We should call it, I don't know, Cali Baja, Mexifornia. This image is a reminder that in a world where we shift from nation state to city state, and power shifts going on, The border simply does not want to exist. And the border fence, in my opinion, is as ineffective and wasteful as any other wall in history. It will go down in history alongside the Great Wall and the Maginot Line, because the border simply doesn't want to exist. As we go deeper into the day, just reflect on what this means for us. The new order is not about shifting boundaries. It's about dissolving boundaries.
Now, Paul Sappho presented that to about 1,500 people, including some of our Republican mayors, our Democratic city councils, businesses like Kaiser, Google. 1,500 people witnessed that talk about regionalizing us and being I guess the example, the world's shining example, which we are with cap and trade as well. We are the world's shining example for some very, very radical agendas. Now, Paul Sappho has been, not only can I find him in presenting to city councils throughout the Bay Area, but you can see he's also getting involved in some real estate conferences to talk about regionalizing the Bay Area. Folks, I believe we are heading towards a major crisis. And I just want the truth. Don't you just want your representatives to share everything I shared with you tonight? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm not on top of all the projects that are happening around us. Don't we just want the truth? Don't we just want them to tell the truth?
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
Before we go on to that video, I know I've shared with you some really, really devastating stuff, I believe. When you look at the big picture, it's, to me, scary. We've missed some important things. They've all been there. The documents are there. It's just, have we seen them? Have we been researching them? Do we know about them? Well, let's have a little fun now and go into the next video.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
Okay, count. Count the white team passing the ball. There'll be a quiz. Are you counting? Okay, what'd you get? 14? 15, I hear 15. 17, did I hear 17?
I missed the gorilla. The correct answer is 16 passes.
Who got 16? Who got 16? Be proud.
Did you spot the gorilla?
Who spotted the gorilla?
For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla.
Who missed the gorilla?
If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game?
Who noticed all of that?
Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
We've missed some details, haven't we?
Yeah.
We have missed some extraordinary details that has us to where I believe we are heading into a major crisis. Now, let's have a little bit more fun. Can anybody see the bear in this picture? Don't you think it's important for the hunter to know that the bear is right behind him? An important detail, right? How about FedEx? We see FedEx trucks everywhere. Does anybody know about the FedEx logo? The FedEx logo, remember it used to be Federal Express? Well, they redesigned the logo to represent, to give detail to what FedEx is all about. What does FedEx do? It likes to tie in a timely manner forward information, forward things. So what is in the FedEx logo? Did you know that there's a spoon, a measuring spoon? See that? And did you know that there was an arrow? So now every time you see a FedEx truck or package or whatever, you will never miss these details, ever. In fact, here's another little detail. See, I cut this red pepper, and look what showed up, a happy face. The point is that we've missed some details, and at this point, I believe we have choices to make. In fact, I see two choices that we should make, or that we have to make. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I am sorry I can't travel both, but I'm glad I can't travel both. Because if you look at one road, this one, all these documents here, every single one lead us into something that the United States is not about. Every single one of those takes away our freedom and our liberty. This is not America. But then, we have another choice to make too. Here's a book that's really important. The U.S. Constitution. And what was the U.S. Constitution built upon? Our Christian values, our godlike values. So if I'm going to do more research in the future and I'm going to choose two paths, I think this is the path that I want to take. This is the one that's about freedom and liberty and individuals and private property rights and what's good about people. This one is to take us down a very, very dark and evil path. This takes us to that. And those do not represent our freedom. Now, if Thomas Paine were alive today, he would be saying, we are in an American crisis. Now is not the time to be a sunshine patriot. What is a sunshine patriot? We only go out and fight when the weather's good. The weather, folks, it's terrible right now. We are in winterous times, and these are the times that try men's souls. And tyranny like hell is not easily conquered. The harder their conflict, the more glorious their triumph. And if Thomas Paine were alive today, he would be telling you, get on that bus, go to July 18th meeting, you stop that One Bay Area plan, because what that One Bay Area plan will do is take away your freedoms, your liberties, and your rights as citizens in the freest nation the world has ever known. And do not let these unaccounted people, these cogs, these council of governments who wants to push us into regionalism, do not let them win. Be there and have your voice be heard. We are in a survivor game. How many people remember Survivor? Our survivor game must be just like Survivor of ABC or NBC or whatever. CBS that we don't watch anymore. We must outwit, outplay, outlast, outsmart, and outlaw these people. Because life is in the details. And even though we're in the fight of our lives, at the same time, we need to enjoy our lives and stop and smell the roses. I thank you for being here.
If you have questions, write them on there, and we'll have the questions read, and she'll answer them. And I did forget one thing. I forgot to mention our November meeting. I don't know how I managed that, but it's our 10th anniversary, and we do have a special speaker for that 10th anniversary. That is Senator Jim DeMint.
Ready?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You paint a pretty bad picture. You paint a pretty bad picture. We know what they want. You indicate that it has passed the Congress and is supported by Democrats and Republicans. Is it ever a possibility to slow down or let this thing stop? How can we do it?
What they fear, they being the people all behind this, is the masses coming together. That is their biggest fear. So yes, it can be stopped, but that's only when we, the people, decide to come together and fight, and starting here locally with the One Bay Area plan, with getting local, running for office, replacing, I say, we wipe out Congress, we get rid of them all, and people like you and me should be part-time politicians in Washington, getting this country back on track to a country that protects freedoms and liberties for all people.
As opposed to noisy meetings, what real impact have the efforts of the past 5 to 6 years had on truly stopping Agenda 21 for Bay Area, or One Bay Area?
Sure, here's the exciting thing. Many cities around the United States are removing themselves from the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives. Now, a lot of the policies are already implemented and put through, but that's a great step. Also, people are running for office, which is also stopping and what we call the shadow governments that we are seeing, like the ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, and Metro Transportation Commission, and these groups that are forming together to take away our freedoms and our liberties. So Agenda 21 is we are making great strides against Agenda 21, but we need more strides, and more people around the world are speaking out against United Nations Agenda 21, and here's when we know that we're doing some great things. When they need to keep calling us names, when they need to keep the stories that we share out of the media, you know that they are frightened by what we have to share and what we are uncovering. So that's good news.
What is happening in Europe?
Well, when it comes to, I'm not sure what someone means. Is that the cap and trade program? What specifically?
The land use, all of the same thing.
What's going on in terms of where they are in implementing Agenda 21 or stopping it?
Well, here's the thing about the rest of the world. They've known about Agenda 21 for a long time. It's to them no big deal. When I was at the Rio Earth Summit, and I asked about Agenda 21 and do other countries know about it, Agenda 21, and I got laughed at. I got laughed at like, really, you don't know about Agenda 21? United States, we don't know about Agenda 21 because it's a direct attack on our private property, our freedom, and our liberty. So therefore, they had to keep us out of the loop of what Agenda 21 was. Now in cap and trade on Europe, they've had some success, according to them, on the cap and trade program. They're now they're trying to link with Australia on a cap and trade program, which Australia is now trying to link with Quebec on a cap and trade program. And who just linked with Quebec? California. So what's happening in Europe is, and elsewhere around the world, is we're trying now, we, not us, but these people who would have Agenda 21 be realized for the 21st century, is to link through a cap and trade system that will then create what they want as a world governance. And the holy grail of the cap and trade system, and Europe is a big part of this, is to create a global price on carbon dioxide. I just went to the Navigating an American Carbon World with the United Nations Framework on Climate Change Convention, and And it was also the Department of Interior, the Department of Energy, CARB, Mary Nichols, about 600 people in San Francisco who were there to talk about California's cap and trade program. And what they said about California is, if California's cap and trade program fails, it will fail around the rest of the world. Now, one more thing I want to say about that is Christiana Figueres is the secretary of the United Nations Framework on Climate Change Convention, who was one of the keynote speakers at this conference I attended. Also was in San Francisco to meet with the United Nations youth group. And what did this group do? These college students do? They signed a treaty. This is no joke. They signed a treaty to have humans in the future bioengineered to be smaller people. Why? Because smaller people have a smaller carbon footprint.
We're going to show up on July the 18th, and they still will pass their motions on one Bay Area. Then what? What is being decided on July the 18th?
I'm not sure what they're going to, I think we have a pretty good idea what they're going to do on July 18th. It's just like the Klamath River dams. We know that no matter how much we fight, no matter how many scientists, no matter how many people come forward and say that what you are using, the numbers, the data that you are using to push these agendas through, to push these plans through, is based on junk. It's manipulated, it's data that's being used to push their agenda through. I do have a feeling that on July 18th, it's going to be a historic day either way. I believe that they will pass the One Bay Area plan. But we do not give up. And maybe, and I hate to say this because I love California, it's the only home I know, maybe California is lost, but we can protect other states before they go down the same path as California. Now, I say that lightly because I will do everything I can to save my home. But we've got a big mountain to climb here with climate change, Obamacare, Endangered Species Act, dam removals, the One Bay Area plan, regionalism. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So, but you can't give up. That's the thing. The One Bay Area plan, if they pass it, I can just see a bunch of people just devastated. But you can't give up. At the same time, I unfortunately won't be at that event. I will be up in Siskiyou County because what we're doing is a private property rights rally, 2 days, on Saturday and Sunday, the 20th and the 21st. And what we're going to talk about are your alloidial titles. What's your alloidial title? Every piece of property has a title, a right to it. Did you know that your private property rights extend to the core of the earth and as high as you can see? How many knew that? They don't want us to know that. Why? Because then your private property rights trump the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. And why aren't we being educated about that? Because once we're educated about that, the government has to back off. So we're going to start in Siskiyou County and hopefully bring Ramona Hage of the Hage Ranch family and Danny Martinez and a few others down to the Bay Area to do training on alloidial titles and private property rights. Yes? Was that a really long answer?
Was Agenda 21 the reason the dam on the Sacramento River at Red Bluff was removed?
Here's what I say about Agenda 21. I think Agenda 21 is in every area of our lives. Whether it's the Common Core curriculum, whether it's your private property rights, whether it's the whole thing around Agenda 21 is the world is too populated. So how do you decrease the population? Fluoride in our water, you take away water, you destroy our farmers and our ranchers, you limit what people can, you bioengineer people into smaller human beings with cat-like eyes so that they can see at night without light. Not kidding.
Can we save the Yosemite Camp Curry Ahwahnee Hotel? Yes or no?
The Ahwahnee Hotel is not going down, but the pool and the tennis courts are. I don't know that they're going to be saved. I think McClintock is working, Congressman McClintock is working very hard. I had a meeting with him in Yosemite about this. He is doing everything he can to protect our rights in national parks, because those parks are ours.
How can we get your ideas into our educational system?
The children, I believe, are the biggest victims in this all. And you have grandchildren, you have neighbors who have children. I don't see any reason why one person in this room can't grab something. I don't know what you're passionate about. Grab something that you're passionate about and create a talk or a speech or whatever around it and go to the schools. I will never be invited back to Notre Dame Namur to speak, because when I saw that what they were doing to the children with the college students, endorsing the United Nations Earth Charter, as well as urging students to send letters to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to protect wolves, I spoke out. I went to the school. I spoke to the dean. I spoke to the people at the Dorothy Stang Center. I made a lot of noise, but that's what we need to do. We need to be in their face in every corner. There is no reason why there can't be something that I know I didn't give you a list of action items, but there's not one reason why you can't take something from today and go with it, run with it, do research on it. And a friend of mine, Paul, who's here tonight, Paul and I are fighting the San Carlos transit villages. Paul and I, a couple weekends on Father's Day, as a matter of fact, Paul created a bunch of flyers, of 3x5 cards, and we walked streets, flyering the streets, alerting people about the priority development areas under the transit villages, which is also, part and parcel with the One Bay Area plan. There's no reason why you can't do this to teachers, Common Core curriculum. Here's a book. Orlean Curley, get this book about Common Core and go to your teachers and meet with them for lunch and tell them about this curriculum, which is Agenda 21.
Are the developing countries like Brazil, China, India following the UN rules regarding biodiversity?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
How will destroying ranches and cattle affect our food supplies?
Well, I don't know about you, but I need food to eat in order to survive. And when you are looking at the vertical farming, this is about vertical sprawl, not horizontal sprawl. A traditional ranch or farm is considered horizontal sprawl. The future of vertical farming, from research that I've done on it, has been at first cows, because we need protein, and livestock will be at the bottom of these buildings. The methane from the livestock will fuel the building. And then as you go up, you're going to have smaller fruits and vegetables, obviously, as you go up these buildings. This is no joke. This is what they call eco cities. And they even had examples of these at the United Nations Earth Summit in June of 2012. Well, eventually, human beings are going to see that that is inhumane to have animals confined. We already know they want us to move to a vegetarian diet. In fact, in the Global Biodiversity Assessment Report, it states that if we lived like peasants and more of an Asian diet, that the Earth can be more populated. What they're going to do is what they call a 150-mile radius, might be a 100-mile radius. And what is that? When you have a region, they will take the land around us, and ICLEI is already working on this. The International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives is already working on an eco-budget. And what's an eco-budget? You take the land around your city, your region, whatever, and you calculate, you do studies, you inventory what species are in the area, what natural native crops are available. You take the number of people in that region, you divide, and our California.gov also has this on their websites. There's so much you can find. They are coming up with what the average person, the amount of calories the average person should eat per day. So then you take the biodiversity, the crops, whatever, in your 100-mile radius, you divide it by the number of people, and that's your food supply. So where do you get more food? From vertical farms. On buildings, on high-rises, you're going to have tomato plants going out of windows. This is the future that they want to create.
What can you tell us about the grassroots opposition in the Bay Area in the last couple of years?
What an amazing crew. Did you know that the Bay Area has been represented on TV shows like Glenn Beck? Mimi was on Glenn Beck. Our own Rosa Corey was on Glenn Beck. We have Michael Shaw and Joanne Shaw of Freedom Advocates. In the Bay Area, we have the most extraordinary freedom fighters, which is quite ironic considering we are the pilot program for the rest of the United States when it comes to rural councils and how to get dam removals and one Bay Area and regions. Although these things are happening throughout the United States, here's what people have to remember. No other state has cap and trade. We're it.
You have attended numerous conferences. Who are these people? Are they unwitting tools? Are they evil geniuses? What do they personally think that they will get out of these policies if completely implemented?
These people make me shake my head. I don't understand who would come up with an idea to bioengineer human beings. We went to a talk not too long ago from Stanford on geoengineering, and that was to, create cloud cover so that, and put sulfur in the air so that the sulfur reflects the sun back into the atmosphere. I don't know who these people are. I think that they're playing God. I think they're messing with the environment. They're supporting companies like Monsanto, which we know is degrading our soil. I have been to a lot of conferences. I actually enjoy going to them, although I'm very afraid. I get scared all the time when I go to them. I kind of sit in the back corner with my camera trying to not be noticed too much, because I know that they know who I am now because I've been to enough of these. But I encourage everyone to go to these conferences. They're actually quite extraordinary. And the data that we get is like cap and trade, for example, what I've learned at the Navigating American Carbon World. You know what they said? We have too many wineries. So for you people, and I'm a certified sommelier, so I love wine. So for you people who love wine, maybe you should only have one glass. This is the kind of stuff you hear in these conferences. These are not freedom lovers. In fact, I call them anti-human humans.
Can you comment on the general acceptance or non-acceptance by the mayors and the local Bay Area representatives and that presentation on the road to regionalism?
I only know of one mayor personally. I personally know one mayor who was there, and I'm not going to say who it is, because I don't know where he stands in this region. I don't know if he was just there, because there was other information at this conference. I do know that when I was running for Congress and I went to the Republican convention in Sacramento, and we were at the Bay Area, with the Bay Area delegation, I talked to mayors, city council members, Republicans, and asked them about the One Bay Area plan, asked them about regionalism, and I'm telling you, they did not want to talk to me. They said, it was like, there's so-and-so. For whatever reason, they are unwilling to face this One Bay Area plan with honesty. And I don't know if they're I don't know what is driving them. I don't know, I wish I knew.
So that was the last question.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you have more questions, I think we have more questions than we had time for, you can feel free to come up and chat with her afterwards. And thank you very much. I'll see you next time.